Well, welcome to the Bible Seminary's podcast. My name is Jordan McClinton. I'm a student here at the Bible Seminary, and with me is...
I'm Samantha Rood. I am an alumni. I graduated in 2019, and we're stoked to be here with David and Micah Gamboa. Yay!
Great to be here.
Super excited to talk to you guys. So give us like a quick, brief, kind of like a little bit of your background, your story. I mean, you guys are married, so like... give us a little bit of your testimony, how you guys met, how you got into this.
So I was a student pastor in Sugar Land, and a lot of my students were being introduced to pornography like young, 14 years old. And they were telling me, I was just playing this game on my phone, and then this ad popped up, which led to a porn site, and then they were struggling with addiction, and then a lot of their parents were even struggling with addictions. And so I was like, well, there has to be some way for me to help. And so that was how I found Elijah Rising. And I went to the Museum of Modern Day Slavery. And I thought, this is such a great, tangible way to show people, like, you don't know what you're watching when you watch pornography. You don't know how that woman ended up there. And so I brought my students through the museum, and they were able to understand, like, the truth of, like, whoa, this whole industry is exploiting men and women, and it helped them sort of overcome that addiction. And so after that, I got super involved. I began to volunteer just as much as I could, and that's how I met Micah. They had at the time purchased an 84-acre property in Kendleton, which was a couple of minutes from where I live. So on my day off on Monday, I would go out and volunteer, like work in the garden or do whatever. And that was how I met Micah. And then we started dating shortly after that. And then I realized this was such a passion of mine to help. Because when I went on intervention and I saw what was happening to these women, I was like, well, I can't not do something. I have to get involved. So. And you were there.
Yeah, how did you get involved with Elijah Rising, Micah?
So I actually stumbled on some trafficked women's stories through another partner agency. Now they're a partner. I didn't really know what I was reading. I think I had heard about sex trafficking, but I never sunk in. So this was way back. This was probably 2010. Really not a lot on the landscape, especially in Houston, of anti-trafficking work being done or even being aware of it. So I stumbled on those stories, and it was really ended up being like a divine intercessory moment for me, where the Lord, my roommate even was like, are you okay in there? I'm just sobbing, and it was a divine moment. So from then on, kind of all in or out. I'm like, okay, now what, Lord? I have to do something. And like I said, there really wasn't anything. So what I found was a documentary screening. I gathered all my friends. We drove all the way down to Houston, from an hour. I'm like, you guys are going. That's where I met the founder of Elijah Rising. And even that moment was a very sovereign. That was one of the only times I feel like I heard the voice of God say, jump in. I'm like, I'm not telling anybody that because that's weird. I am supposed to be your, sidekick or whatever. But so I just started coming around, and at that point, Elijah Rising was not a thing.
Right.
It was just a prayer meeting. Yeah. I say just, but it was a very critical time. So we really started in the prayer movement. We did these 10 to midnight prayer sets, and then we would go out on intervention after that. I'm like, what in the world? This is clearly before children. So I just started coming around, and I started leading prayer, and then I was like, I'm administratively kind of minded, so stepping in that way. And then so I got to see the whole inception and the founding of the organization. I've just
not just see it,
but help with it. Yeah.
Which is
so
incredible.
Yeah. So just kind of stuck in there since then. Can't get rid of me.
Yeah. And prayer still remains an integral part. Every morning we pray as a staff, and that's just the foundation of everything that we do.
Wow.
Yeah. I love it. You can tell. You really can tell that prayer permeates, and the presence of God is your strategy, right? It's just it's what he does, right? The restoration and freedom and liberation of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's immensely spiritual. Even when you go into the brothels, you'll see, these shrines built to different idols. And even when we have women come into our program, they understand sort of spiritual realm, and they know that there is this God. They just don't know who he is. Right. Like we had one woman say, like, I've been near death so many times, and I felt like there was this person that was like protecting me. And she was like, now I know it's Jesus. Like, I can't wait to know more about him. Yeah. And so we just hear like stories like that. Yeah. It's just incredible.
It's kind of akin. You hear some of these stories of people going to other countries and, talking to a villager or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, I know that God that you're talking about. Like, let me explain, let me tell you why. I just didn't know it was Jesus. Yeah. That's beautiful, beautiful. So we hear your stories. I mean, that's awesome. Love hearing kind of how you guys get started. Just for our viewers, you want to give us like a brief overview of what Elijah Rising is, what you guys do, like specifically? And
yeah. So we are obviously anti-trafficking specifically. And within that, it kind of encompasses any kind of sexual exploitation. And so in the strip clubs and pornography, what have you, that is what we're fighting. Trying to give, I like to call it like we give a bridge to the community or really the church to get engaged in the issue, and then we give a bridge to the victim or the person in the commercial sexual exploitation to get out. And we do that through 4 main pillars. We do prayer, awareness, intervention, and then now restoration. So that's kind of us in a very small nutshell.
And how are you getting kind of the awareness of this out in the community to churches, to people? I mean, what are you guys doing to kind of spur that on? And
well, before COVID, we did van tours, which was, you get in a van and we drive you to places in Houston where we know trafficking is going on, and we sort of explain what it looks like. The landscape in Houston it's one of the most diverse cities. And we also don't have, zoning laws. So brothels can open up anywhere, any neighborhood. And so throughout Houston, it's no longer like this red light district.
Right, we used to be like this and that. Right?
Yeah, like one street. Now it's pockets in different communities. Like the Galleria is one of the most highest concentration of brothels, and then it's even now in the Spring, Woodlands area, and even Katy. And then there's also, truck stops and cantinas where Latin American women are sold. And then most hotels have some form of trafficking happening inside the hotels. And so it's just this problem that has grown at just an incredible exponential rate. And I think largely in part that's due to pornography and the increased use of that. But yeah, and people are now becoming more aware of it today. Like even right now, a lot of people are very interested in sex trafficking. It's all over the news. It's all over the media. And so are trying to piggyback off on that because there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of ideas about what trafficking looks like. Like a lot of people see the movie Taken and they get this idea.
One picture of the 1% of, maybe that's me generalizing, but a small percentage of sex trafficking looks like that compared to the everyday in our neighborhoods, in our strip centers, all around.
It's a super complex problem, and and some people say, well, it's just these evil people that are lurking behind the shadows, but
it's
a lot
of it's the lawyers,
Yeah, and a lot of the women that we serve have been trafficked by their families, which is something, no one really talks about or
it's hard to wrap your brain around that. Yeah. But I did want to exhort you, as you're talking, you're trying to piggyback off of, but I say this is the answer to prayers from 2010 till now. You know what I mean? I've been in meetings with you guys, led worship with you guys, and it's like, Lord, we just want it to be revealed. The things that are hidden, these things that happen in secret, Lord, reveal them, because the more we know about them, the less power they have to exist in this seedy underbelly of our society, right? And as the news started breaking, I just want to encourage you, I feel that in my bones, that it's the Lord saying, it doesn't look like you might have thought it was gonna look, but I'm answering your prayers, and that's super exciting. It's super exciting, for real. So tell us about what intervention looks like. Like if somebody were to, are you guys doing interventions during COVID?
We have a small team of people.
Augmented
Yeah.
kind of, okay, we're flexing like everything
We're like our
else,
SEAL
right?
team, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Oh my gosh, okay.
We get like these texts at 2:30 a.m. I'm like, oh, good job.
Yes, go get them, single people with no children
Yes.
or older people with
Yes.
grown children. I think that's a beautiful
Yeah.
aspect. We can have a whole other discussion on the who shows up to interventions and how cool they are.
Yes.
But what does an intervention look like in non-COVID days? Let us in on
So
how that looks.
it's
Open to the public, so we'd invite people from all different churches, all different faith backgrounds would come, and we'd train them on how to approach women, and we'd go to the places where there's the highest concentration of women in prostitution. So we'd send a team to the street, we'll send a team to the strip clubs, we'll send a team to Latin American cantinas, we'll send a team to Asian massage parlors, and then we'll have a prayer team back at kind of home base, and they're praying while we're feeding them information. Like, hey, I just talked with Stacy on the street, and she's having a situation where she's, losing custody of her child. We need you to pray for her right now. So we'll be praying with her on the street, and they'll be praying back there, and then we'll have women that want to exit, sometimes right even on the spot. And you encounter all kinds of situations, and the whole goal of it is we want to demonstrate the love of Christ by going to these places where a lot of times you'll hear people say when you walk into the bars, and you're like, we always say we're with the church. Yeah. And they say, you don't belong here.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, you're in the wrong place. Wow. And it catches them so off guard, but we begin to just share the love of Christ with them. We bring gifts, we bring a way to exit. So we bring a hotline number that they can call whenever they're ready to leave that life. And you never know what you are gonna experience. Sometimes we even talk to guys who are going and purchasing women for hours, and we begin to unpack, why are you here? Why do you keep coming back? And you just see just the craziest things. And I remember a recent intervention we did. We were standing in this hotel, and the guy who was leading it, he shined his lights on this dumpster in his truck. And he's like, I think I saw someone go behind the dumpster. And so we walked behind this dumpster, and this girl is preparing to shoot up heroin behind this dumpster. Wow. And we just said, can we pray for you? And right there in that moment behind the dumpster, we were just like praying, and the Lord just began to minister to her.
Amazing.
And she just began to feel his love. And so that's what intervention is about. It's
Literal intervention.
Yeah. Going to the places where you would least expect.
Yeah. Someone to say, we're from the church.
Yeah.
You got to think the consistency of that. I mean, continuing to be there. I haven't personally, but our church has had the pleasure of being actually part of some of those hotline calls, having teams of women in our church that are able to receive some of those people calling. You got to think there's got to be some like a fairly large psychological situation going on with a lot of those people that maybe take some time and some consistent presence from you guys to continue being there, to kind of get them to that point where they're ready, they feel comfortable, or the time is right to make that call.
We even had like this woman, it was so crazy. We were touring another facility. It was like a partner agency, it's a residential care place. So we're doing the tour, women are there, and the workers kind of introduced us as Elijah Rice, so we were just touring them, and this woman said, I know you guys. Like, I got one of your hotline numbers on the street. I kept it with me for 2 years, in and out of jail. And then I called, and I was like, stop.
What?
Like, what? Like, that's insane. The sheer, like, the willpower to just, the shred of hope that it took to just hold on to that number through homelessness, addiction, jail. Like, that is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
So,
it's incredible.
It's really, and a lot of times we don't get to see, sometimes we'll go to Georgia and New York, and you just know, like, okay, we get little shreds of testimonies behind the scenes. But I think it really, I heard this one story, and this isn't ours, but where this woman, she was a missionary in a foreign country, she just stopped on the street and just smiled at this woman who was in prostitution, probably not from her own fault, just like smiled at her and just like saw her. And And yes, and it literally changed her whole life. And the story goes, like, she ends up getting saved and getting out. And I'm like, okay, like, if we can just be literally Jesus to see people where they're at and enter into, you know, in James it talks about like going into the place where the widow and the orphan are in their distress.
Places of pain.
Yeah, places
sure.
of pain. So that's kind of what intervention is.
I wanted so badly to leave so many times before, but the consequences of getting caught terrified me.
Life isn't all roses and butterflies, but I promise you, if you keep the faith, the good will always outweigh the bad. I tell her that even on her loneliest nights, that she will never be alone.
I just needed someone to see me. I needed help. I finally had a way out. I had been crying out to God, secretly reading the Bible, believing in a miracle, and He heard me.
Lord, you are mighty. You are gracious.
Yes, I will stand up for justice. Yes, I will stand up against trafficking. Yes, I will stand up and fight.
Let's rejoin the conversation.
So I have really not had a lot of experience in Houston, but I got involved with Elijah Rising because I am a big old Katy kid. Like, I'm fifth generation Katy. I love Katy. And when I moved back 2010, 11, Elijah Rising was just kind of getting going, and I was like, there's sex trafficking in my city, in my little city of Katy. And then learning, you know, a lot of it is Asian women in massage parlors and, you know, on Mason Road where we grew up going. So having the connection of, oh my gosh, it's in front of my face. Like you said, David, once you see it, it's like, how could you not? How can I not be involved, right? So can you tell us as Katy people and like the greater Houston area, what does it actually look like, sex trafficking? I know you talked a little bit about pockets, residential areas, but like for us here, lay it on us. What does it look like?
Yeah, so the typical clientele of these, you know, I'll use brothels because that's primarily what's in Katy. You have these places that they look like they're massage parlors, but they look shady. You know, the windows are blacked out, security cameras all over, ATM machine in the lobby. You see it, you know, something's going on in there. And these are actually all throughout Houston. There's probably over 500 of them. And they're all owned by various, you know, shell companies. It's very organized crime. But in these massage parlors, you have women that are primarily from other countries, mostly Asian countries, who have been trafficked into the United States with the idea of, you know, hey, we'll bring you to the United States. You can work as a waitress, and we'll give you a good job, and you pay off this debt. Well, they come here and they find out, oh, you're actually going to work prostitution. And oh, you actually have all these fees that you're going to accrue while you're working that keep women trapped in these places. Some of these women even live inside of the massage parlors. And so you typically have a clientele that is, you know, higher income, married, upper middle class, white males. And so
Typical
to at church,
absolutely, professionals.
Yeah, and so you know, they typically visit these places. It could even be during the lunch break. These places are the most busy from 12 to 2 p.m. That was a statistic. And in Houston, just Houston alone, you have around 3,000 men visiting these places daily between the hours of 12 and 2.
Right, lunch break.
Yeah, and you know, and it's lunch, it's before work, it's after work. So yeah, it's a huge problem that continues to grow. And one of the things that we've been looking at, the data, is the more these places get shut down, the more places open up around where the places have been shut down. So we can't figure out why that is. But it's just a growing problem that's that's, hopefully we'll be able to find some way to shut these places down. It's always been somewhat of a challenge for us.
But also, I would say, Katie, there's another study that was done that showed that with minor sex trafficking, domestic minor sex trafficking, the number one perpetrator is a family. So there are, and he mentioned hotels, there's the domestic trade. So a lot of adults are being, publicized on the internet through different web portals or whatever, even webcam girl kind of houses. A lot of those, it looks like she's taking her own picture. It's a pimp, that's all trafficking for the most part. And then you have family members who are trafficking their kids, their nieces, their nephews out of their homes, apartments, or we know of, when parents split, sometimes one parent will traffic the child during the summers or during the weekends, and then they go back to their normal life, and you just would never know. So it really is a situation where it's under your nose, it's covert, but it's not impossible to spot. So that's the good news of you can spot the signs, and there is hope for restoration at the end of the day.
They have, in a way, systematized it. So there is a way for someone to go online on Amazon and look up how to become a pimp, or what are the methods of, persuading a woman to sell her body for sex. Wow. And so I think the sort of proliferation of these materials and people sort of creating basically a system for exploitation. Right. Yeah. For sure. And we're seeing, even young people traffic their own classmates in high schools,
because pimps they'll get a recruiter, they'll hire recruiters, they'll send the recruiters into schools or on Snapchat and TikTok, whatever, to go and recruit for them. So you'll get a kickback fee if you bring in another girl to this party or something like that. And then the whole system goes. So we know the story of where this exact thing happened in Katy, where a recruiter got some kids, I think they were on the basketball, I don't want to get the details wrong, but some kids in high school, right? To recruit these girls, come to a party, they get gang raped, they get filmed, and that is then used as blackmail so that they will keep working or start working prostitution on the side, right? And so it's just completely, you would never, as a parent, as a believer, you'd never be able to think these things up. You know what I mean? Right. So.
You guys talked about intervening, giving these, giving opportunities, I guess, to reach out. You mentioned restoration. So kind of, what is that next step when someone reaches out to you guys and says, I'm ready to do something or make a move, or maybe I can't make a move yet, but I just need some help. What do you guys?
So, it's been really cool. So I think a lot of times we hear about the issue and there's this righteous anger that comes up, and we're like, we're gonna rescue all, yes. Right. And you need that. Yes. Just knock the doors. So I think there's this progression of, anyway, all that to say, we've come to the place, the real realization where we go, you know what? I have zero capability. I have nothing, and it has to be Jesus. And so we've seen it enough times where Jesus has intervened and brought the healing, brought the restoration, brought the exit. I'm like, okay, God, you're the restorer. It's not me. But just in a practical aspect, so I'll just be very transparent. The pipeline from, reaching to restoration, especially really across the nation, but even as much resource and knowledge that we have in Houston, it's still very much lacking. There's a lot of gaps in the pipeline. So when an ideal pipeline would be, or let me just say what it is now, it's we reach or people reach these women, give her a way of escape. She calls that hotline number. It's a 24/7 thing. They assess, hey, this is what it's going to look like. They actually dispatch a team, usually a male and a female, to go pick her up, take her to a safe location. We need more safe locations. Yeah. We really, really do. We need an assessment center that's strictly for sex trafficking victims. Just putting that out there.
You're wanting to start
a nonprofit. That's citywide, right? HPD needs this. Anyways, and so they can do a full assessment, psychological, physical, all of the things, safe space. And so that assessment period should be up to 30 days. And during that time, you're assessing what's your family structure. Do you have a safe location to go back to? If not, here are your options, both locally and nationwide. Nationwide, there's a vast number of beds that are lacking, right? We don't have enough bed space and services. But so the next step in that process ideally going into a safe home where you can get holistic, wraparound, clinical, spiritual, financial, occupational, social, intellectual restoration. Because what we're finding is there's a massive spectrum. I mean, trafficking, it doesn't just pinpoint one demographic or socioeconomic status or what have you, right? So we have women who haven't completed 4th grade, and then we have women who have a bachelor's degree. We have people who, there's just a huge gap. So in the safe home process, you have to look at all those factors. You have to look at the woman holistically and say, where are the needs? Where are the gaps? What life skills did you not get? Do you know how to budget? What are the things that help to make you vulnerable to these kind of predators in the first place?
That's so good.
How can we fill those gaps? Create not just a safe environment, but almost like it's a community. It's a community of care. It's a community of, we are believers. You don't have to be a believer, right? We are rooting for you. We are committed to being your family at whatever level you're willing to have us, and for as long as it takes. And so, and to do that, honestly, not only are there a limited number of beds, but there's a limited number of safe homes that are utilizing clinical professionals. And that's a huge gap. So I think over nationwide, there's less than 10 that are utilizing the services of a psychologist. Yes, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, which to me is terrifying. It cannot just be, hey, we're going to pray the trauma away. That is not appropriate. You have to, not appropriate. Jesus is the healer, but also medicine works. It's everything.
It is a both and.
You got to stabilize. So that process for us looks like, again, assessing her needs holistically, building a community of support, but then giving her time. And sometimes it takes months to just build enough trust. I'm gonna have a bed, I'm gonna have meals, and so we find so many layers of trauma, and so usually whenever we work with women in trauma therapy, we're not even addressing the period of sex trafficking, although that is horrific, and so we're addressing childhood trauma. And so in order to get those roots out, anyways, you understand, but they can stay with us for 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years. And so during that whole process, we walk with them through their trauma, through all the life skills, unto a job, and the ultimate independent living, successful independent living. The cool thing is that we've been able to see probably 9 out of 10, actually more than that. It's 9.5 out of 10 women who have children, maybe in CPS or what have you, be reunited with their kids, which huge. That is yes, yeah. Wow. So anyway, that's it.
So, man, we're hoping that our viewers and our listeners are just captivated by this, and they want to join in, they want to help. So if someone were to come and you and ask, how can we be part of this? How can we help? How can we join a prayer team or an intervention team? What is kind of the process for you guys having people join your team?
Come to an intervention. Show up. If you're too scared to go out, that's cool. Just stay in the prayer room. It is so powerful. There's been testimonies, even of David going out at his team or whatever, and women, people, whatever, in the prayer room are talk to the person in the red shirt, and then a red shirt walk, and it's you know what, Jesus, yeah, who knew, right? I think obviously pray to the Lord of the harvest, right? He's Lord, not only do your work, but where do I fit in the puzzle? Because the thing is we have all these on-ramps. We have all these volunteer opportunities that are nice and packaged, but the Lord has a specific piece of the puzzle. And I am a firm believer that every single person, every single believer has a part to play, because sex trafficking is one of those issues that homelessness, addiction, fatherlessness, unintended pregnancy, all of it matters or factors in. It contributes. So maybe it's not with Elijah Rising that you get engaged. Maybe it's with your pregnancy center down the road. And you know what? We are seeing the same people. So ask the Lord, where is my part? And then I always say, like, whatever professional skill you have, if you're a podcaster, like if you are an artist, we work with actors, we work with theater companies, we work with photographers and lawyers and doctors and psychologists and architects and master city planner. Like, we need everyone's skill set to come to bear on this issue. And so there is a place. I think just keep moving forward. Keep taking those next steps of faithfulness until you find your niche, you know? So.
And David, will you tell us real quick snippet about the gala coming up?
Yeah, so we have a live film premiere.
So excited.
It's going to premiere for the gala. So we're doing it different. It's virtual this year. We're going to be live streaming it on YouTube and Facebook, so you can watch it from the comfort of your own home.
So nice.
And we're wanting people to host watch parties in their home. So we actually provide this whole kit. It's like has the checklist. We have recommended recipes.
What? You guys?
We're going to show you like how to make, mocktails, charcuterie boards,
Yes, please.
all kinds of great stuff. And so you're going to have a fun night in your home. The theater, the movie that we're going to play is family friendly. And so we were intentional about that. We know people were going to be in their homes, so we made it appropriate for children, and it's educational for them too, because they're really the ones that are being targeted by traffickers, and so they need to know. But it's going to be October 17th, 7 p.m. You can go to ElijahRising.org and sign up. You get a ticket. We'll send you a link and all the information that you need. And if you want to create a personal fundraiser, you can create your own personal fundraising page and help us raise the funds that we need. We're trying to raise $200,000.
Awesome. Super.
And so we're excited. We have people from Hawaii, from Florida, from California tuning in. And so it's going to be just an amazing night.
Do we mention that it's free?
Yes.
Woo! We
It's
love
so
that.
Yes. It's going to be fun.
I think we did it, you guys. This was awesome. I'm glad to be back in the podcasting realm with you guys. And
Absolutely. No, it was an honor to talk to you guys.
At this moment on the campus of the Bible Seminary, we are cultivating biblical leaders that are rooted in the Word.
I love the Bible Seminary because of the focus on the inerrant Word of God.
I came to the Bible Seminary out of a desire to know the Bible.
Whether you're a ministry leader, college or high school student, pastor, or simply have a desire to learn the Word of God, there's room for you at the Bible Seminary.